Hey Bio30s, Mr. Malik couldn't make it here. I'm pretty sure he's off trying to learn that new Drake TikTok dance or something like that. But I'm here to talk to you about fertilization and implantation. But before I do, I thought I'd warm you up with a couple of jokes. What is a skeleton's favorite musical instrument? The trombone. What do skeletons say when they head out to sea? Bon voyage. And who won the skeleton beauty contest? Nobody. Okay, I think I can take it from here. Thanks for your help. Okay, so as he mentioned, I'm going to talk to you today about fertilization and implantation. So to start off here, when we look at embryo development, fetal development, and later on into birth, we break things down into things called trimesters. And a trimester is roughly 3 months. So three-month trimesters would equal 9 months of pregnancy. Now, within those 3 trimesters, there's 2 main periods here. So the first period is known as the embryonic period. This is the first 8 weeks of pregnancy. So it would be basically the first 2/3 of the first trimester, if that makes sense. So it's most of the first trimester, and then afterwards, the remaining pregnancy would be known as the fetal period. Now, in the embryonic period, 90% of the tissues and the organs are made. So that means we're going to have major changes during this period, right? We're going to build a heart, we're going to build lungs, and we're going to build all these different organs and systems. Then during the fetal period, organs start to begin to function on their own, and the body starts to grow rapidly. So it just changes in size like crazy. So 2 periods you need to know, the embryonic period and the fetal period. So we're going to start with the embryonic period, but before we do all that, we have to talk about how does fertilization occur, and then ultimately what happens after fertilization. So, fertilization, conception, the joining of the sperm and the egg cell. What happens here is we have a sperm cell and an egg cell. They join together to form a cell known as a zygote. Now, fertilization, once again, must happen within about 24 to 48 hours or the egg will die. The egg can only last about 24, maybe 48 hours at the max. Now, the question that I always get is, well, how is it that one sperm fertilizes the egg? Why wouldn't multiple sperm, if they get there at the same time, or things like that? Well, what actually happens is, when sperm get to the egg, they start to release their enzymes, that acrosome. And the enzyme starts to break down and allow them to burrow into the outer membrane of the egg. But while they do that, and this is the interesting part, you don't actually want to be the first sperm at the egg. Because what happens is the first couple sperm will release their enzymes, break apart, kind of open up a pathway. And then once that pathway is opened, another sperm will come along and actually make it inside of the egg. And once that happens and fertilization occurs, where the nucleus of the sperm and the nucleus of the egg join forces, the egg actually changes polarity, and it actually destroys all the sperm receptors in its membrane and almost puts up this kind of force field against any other sperm coming in. So it's interesting because I know you want to think of it as, oh, well, you want to be the winning sperm. Well, yes, you want to be the winning sperm in a sense that you're the first to get inside, but that doesn't necessarily mean you want to be the first sperm to touch the egg. Usually a couple sperm get in and try and break down that outer membrane, and then another sperm will come along and get even deeper into the egg's membrane. So, moving along here, we have once again a sperm, which is going to be 23 chromosomes, and an egg, which is also 23 chromosomes, and when they combine, they make a 46 chromosome cell. Remembering that chromosomes are essentially packets of DNA. So you would have 23 packets from your dad, 23 packets from your mom, and there would be 2 sets of each one. So there'd be 2 chromosome 1, 2 chromosome 2, 2 chromosome 3, for a grand total of 46. This new cell that we've made is now called a zygote. So now we have a zygote. When a sperm and an egg join forces, we call that a zygote. Now, fun fact for everyone, it is the male that determines the sex of the baby. Because think of your sex chromosomes, right? Males being XY and females being XX. It doesn't matter what egg you get, it will always have an X chromosome in it. But it depends on what sperm you get, because if you get a Y sperm, you get a male, and if you get an X sperm, you get a female. So it's actually the male that would determine the sex of the baby. Moving along here, once fertilization has occurred, and remembering fertilization occurs where? It occurs in the fallopian tubes, not the uterus, the fallopian tubes. We then get the process of cleavage. This will be when the zygote starts to divide, and one cell becomes 2, and 4, and 8, and 16, and away we go. So it's dividing through the process of mitosis. That's just basic cell division. So your one 46 chromosome cell becomes another for 2 46 chromosome cells. And they group together into an organism. So here's an embryo at 3 days. It's an 8-cell organism. And when we reach 16 cells, we now change the name. So we go from 1 zygote to 2 to 4 to 8 to 16. And when we hit that 16 cell, we now call it a morula. And this happens about 3 to 5 days after fertilization. So now we have this new 16-cell organism. It's going to keep growing and dividing until it forms a structure called a blastocyst. Now, this would be about after 7 days or so. The blastocyst will actually kind of shift in how it's made. So I'll show a couple things here for you. So this is a blastocyst right here. You'll notice that this is the inner cell mass. That's actually going to be the embryo. So that's the embryo right there, that inner cell mass, that is going to become the embryo. This outer ring of cells, so we get this outer ring of cells, that's called the trophoblast. And the trophoblast will eventually become the chorion, and the chorion will eventually become part of the placenta. So this outer ring actually will eventually become the placenta, and this inner mass of cells will eventually become the embryo. So, the blastocyst right now is on its way to the uterus, and once it gets into the uterus, maybe about day 6 or so, it will start sucking up nutrients within the uterus. So it's going to start sucking up glucose and oxygen and needed nutrients and things like that. And it's going to start the process of implantation, which should be done by about day 10 to 14. So about 2 weeks in, you should have a fertilized egg grow into a zygote, a morula, then a blastocyst, and that blastocyst implanting into the uterus, into the endometrium. Now it's connected to mom, and now it can start getting blood filled with nutrients and exchanging waste. So about day 14, we have a process of implantation complete. So I just want to end here with this diagram showing the stages of everything here. So starting off, we have our fertilization occurring. So this would be when the egg is ovulated and released, sperm joining forces, so the egg nucleus and the sperm nucleus joining together, that's fertilization. Remember, when fertilization begins to occur, this is when the egg will go through its second division. So it will now become a ovum. Then we have our zygote, which will then go to a 2-cell stage, 4-cell stage, 8-cell stage during the process of cleavage. So we'll start cell division. Then we get to our 16-cell stage, which is a morula, and then we finally end with our blastocyst. Blastocyst having our inner cell mass. This will become the embryo and the fetus itself, and the outer trophoblast, which will become the chorion, and then eventually the placenta. Then, while it's in the uterus, it will kind of burrow up to one side of the uterus. It'll pick a side. It will implant itself within the lining, that endometrium, so it'll implant itself within the endometrium, and then start to grow, get nutrients, and away we go. So that's the process of fertilization as well as implantation. For the next lesson, we're going to discuss, well, how does the embryo grow further, and where do your organs actually come from? So where does your heart come from? Where do your lungs come from? Where does your brain come from? So that's going to be through a process called gastrulation. So, thanks for watching, and we'll chat soon.